He scored 84 goals in 85 games for his country. He dismantled England 6-3 at Wembley, on English soil. He reached a World Cup final, played it half injured, and watched the trophy handed to someone else. Then, exiled and banned, he rebuilt himself in a foreign country, pulled on a foreign shirt, and became a legend all over again. The greatest player never to win a World Cup, the most complete forward Europe ever produced. This is the story of Ferenc Puskás. Budapest, 1930s. The air smells like coal smoke and river damp. Kids play football on cobblestone streets with bundled rags tied into balls, dribbling between lampposts and cartwheels. One of those kids is a round-faced boy with stubby legs and an absolute cannon of a left foot. Ferenc Puskás is barely 10 years old, and already nobody can take the ball from him. His father, a footballer himself, nurtured that gift with quiet obsession. The family lived right next door to the Kispest AC ground. Ferenc didn't just grow up near football, he grew up inside it. The stadium walls were his backyard. The game was his language. By 16, he debuted for Kispest. By 18, he was carrying the whole club on his shoulders. By the time he turned 20, Hungary had already decided. This boy wasn't just a player, he was something else entirely. And Hungary needed something to believe in. The country was under the shadow of World War II, then under Soviet occupation. Puskás and his club, Kispest, soon renamed Honvéd, the army club, became more than footballers. They became national pride with cleats on. Now, you have to understand what Hungary was doing in the early 1950s to understand why the world stopped and stared. The Hungarian national team, the Aranycsapat, the Golden Team, was playing football that nobody had ever seen before. Fluid, rotating, intelligent, players dropping deep, overlapping, pressing with intent decades before pressing was even a concept. Puskás was the engine and the soul of all of it. Short, stocky, deceptively slow-looking, but the moment the ball arrived at his left foot, everything changed. He was surgical, he was ruthless, he was beautiful to watch. Between 1950 and 1956, Hungary went unbeaten for 32 consecutive games. 32. They outscored, outplayed, and outthought every nation that dared to face them. Then came the 25th of November, 1953, Wembley Stadium, England versus Hungary. England had never lost at home to continental opposition. Never, not once. Wembley was sacred ground to them. The English press treated this fixture like a coronation, a formality. The Hungarians were politely expected to lose. What happened instead became one of the most famous 90 minutes in football history. Puskás dragged the ball back with the sole of his boot, leaving England defender Billy Wright sliding past nothing but air. Then he buried it. That one moment, that drag back, that shimmy, that cold-blooded finish went around the world like lightning. Hungary won 6-3 at Wembley. 6 months later, they came back and won 7-1 in Budapest. The world had never seen them like them. And the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland felt like destiny. This is where the story breaks your heart. Hungary reached the 1954 World Cup final against West Germany. They had already beaten this same Germany 8-3 in the group stage. Puskás had been carrying an ankle injury. A brutal tackle had left him limping, but no one could keep him out. He played the final. Hungary went 2-0 up within 8 minutes. The dream was happening. A nation watching through radio static, through grainy black and white screens, dared to believe. Then the rain came. The pitch turned to mud. West Germany scored, then scored again, then again. Final score, West Germany 3, Hungary 2. To this day, some historians call it the miracle of Bern. For Hungarians, it was a wound that never truly closed. Decades later, grown men who watched that match on a radio in a Budapest kitchen would still feel it in their chests. Puskás went home in silence. And then the world changed again. 1956. The Hungarian Revolution. Citizens rising against Soviet occupation, soldiers firing into crowds, tanks rolling through Budapest streets. Honvéd were on the European Cup tour when it happened. Puskás and his teammates listened to the news from abroad. They heard the gunfire in their minds. They thought of their families, and they made an impossible decision. They didn't go back. Puskás was 30 years old, stateless, exiled, and suddenly without a country to play for. He spent 2 years in limbo in Spain and Austria, growing a little heavier, training to stay sharp, waiting for a door to open. It opened, and it led to Madrid. Real Madrid, the late 1950s. Alfredo Di Stéfano is already patrolling the pitch like a general. And now Puskás arrived, the Galloping Major, as they called him, though his galloping had slowed and his waist had widened. Nobody thought it would work. How could a 30-year-old exile who hadn't played competitively in 2 years survive at Real Madrid? What followed was, by any measure, one of the greatest second acts in sporting history. Puskás scored 242 goals in 262 games for Real Madrid. He won the league 4 times. He won the European Cup. He formed the most devastating strike partnership the game had ever seen. Him and Di Stéfano, the Buenos Aires genius and the Budapest thunderbolt. The 1960 European Cup final at Hampden Park, Real Madrid against Eintracht Frankfurt, 100,000 people in the stands. Puskás scored 4 goals. Di Stéfano scored a hat-trick. The final score was 7-3. It is still considered by many, the greatest club performance in football history. Watch the footage. Even now, over 60 years later, watch the footage and try not to smile. And then, improbably, impossibly, he switched international allegiances again. He took Spanish citizenship and played for Spain at the 1962 World Cup. It was a complicated chapter, a decision that divided opinions. But by then, the football world had already forgiven Puskás for everything, because you don't stay angry at someone who plays football like that. After hanging up his boots, Puskás became a manager. He worked in Canada, Chile, Australia, Greece, Paraguay, Egypt, a restless wanderer who carried football with him like a language, a universal language he'd spoken fluently since childhood. He coached Panathinaikos to the 1971 European Cup final, a club from Greece, an outsider story. Of course it was. That's what his whole life had been. Panathinaikos lost 0-2 to Ajax at Wembley, but Puskás was very proud of his players. In 1991, he finally came home to Hungary. The Berlin Wall had fallen, the Soviet Empire had dissolved, Budapest was free, and the older man walked back through the streets of his city, the same streets where a boy had once dribbled a rag ball between lampposts and wept. He was given citizenship again. He was declared a national hero. Hungary retired the number 10 in his honor. Years later, FIFA named the award for the most beautiful goal in the world after him, the Puskás Award. Think about that. Every time someone scores a goal so beautiful it makes you gasp. Every time you see something on a football pitch that makes you stop and say, did he really do that? The name attached to that feeling is his. Ferenc Puskás died in 2006 after years of fighting Alzheimer's disease. He died in Budapest, at home. His statue stands outside the Puskás Arena, Hungary's national stadium, and his legacy stands taller still. Some players win everything and are forgotten. Some players win nothing and are remembered forever. Puskás managed both. And neither. He is remembered simply, completely, eternally as one of the greatest to ever play the game. What do you think? Was the 1954 World Cup final the greatest injustice in football history? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want to go deeper into the stories, the books, and the documentaries we reference to build this episode, everything is linked in the description below.